Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk. Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whatever time you have decided to tune in with us. We would like to welcome you to another episode of Victory at the Table Talk, where we have down-to-earth conversations about various topics to assist with your walk with Christ. Here at the table, you can get the victory, but you can also get a taste of Victory Apostolic Church right here in Matteson, Illinois, where we are building victorious Christ-like lives. Enjoy this episode.
Hello. I hope you guys are all doing very well out there. I am so excited to be here with you. I'm Davita White, and I am back with another Victory at the Table talk. And of course, it is her space with our woven Women of Victory Empowerment Network Ministry. So welcome, and I'm glad you could join us. We're going to talk today about red flags, but I'll give you a little bit more information about that as we get into it. One thing, though, I would like to do is to give you a bit of a heads up, if you will, do a promo, a shout out, whatever you want to call it, and that is for our March 30th podcast. And this is a chat with pastor, and that of course is our senior pastor, Andrew D. Singleton Jr. We're going to chat with the pastor. We're going to ask him questions. He's going to answer those questions, and we're going to have a great talk, and lots of wisdom I'm sure will be shared. So what I want to do is offer you an opportunity to ask questions that you might have for our pastor right here today in our chat. So as you're watching us talk about red flags today, you can offer those questions. We'll take note of them, get them to pastor so he can have time to research and prepare to really fully answer your questions the way you might need them answered. So keep that in mind. It's March 30th, and if you have questions, ask them right now today on our podcast as you listen in to her space. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest. We are, as I said, talking about red flags. Now, most of the time when we hear red flags, we think about interpersonal relationships with significant others, right? But we're going to talk about significant others, but also their work relationships, familial relationships, friendships, and sometimes those red flags, we should have just seen them coming. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk about that. I have three beautiful young ladies with me today. Two of them in their 20s, one in her 40s. We won't get any more deep than that, but they have a wonderful perspective because, you know, I'm in my 50s, so I'm old. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what they see, some situations they've been in, and how they discerned what those red flags really meant and what they did in reaction to those red flags. So let me introduce them, and then we'll get into our questions. First off, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Iris Hildreth. Iris, say a few things to the folks out there.
Hello. Thank you for having me. And again, my name is Iris Hildreth, and I'm excited to be here to talk about red flags and maybe discover some new ones and to get other perspectives. So thanks, Davita.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really glad that you're here with us. It's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And I have a couple of sorors, actually.
Hey,
I know we're not supposed to get plugs and all that, but y'all know what I mean. All right. So we're going to talk to our lovely ladies here. We have Mariah. Let me make sure I got it right. Moran.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I said it right. Mariah Moran, tell us a little bit about you, just real brief, and then we'll get into our questions as well.
All right. Hi, and thank you for having me on the Victory Table Talk. I am Mariah Moran, like she said, and I've been a member of Victory for a good while now. I am in my 20s, and I have experienced red flags, so I can't wait to talk a little bit about them and to give my perspective and to learn, too, and to learn a little bit about, what I can do to avoid them and to, have some discernment moving forward with these red flags.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. We're here to obviously teach ourselves and also to share with our audience, right? So we can all be ready to discern and see. And so, of course, we have Lisa Gary here with us to talk a little bit more about some red flags too. But tell us who you are, Lisa.
So I am Lisa Gary. I am a member of Victory. I am so happy to be here today. I can't wait to discuss. I am more than elated to hear everyone's points of views when it comes to red flags. Some red flags that we should have saw coming a long time ago that we looked the other way towards. But I am happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and let's get into this discussion.
Yes, let's do it. I'm glad to have you all. Thank you so much for being with me. So now, when we talk about red flags, I mean, that's the term that we're very familiar with, right? But what it really absolutely boils down to is seeing the signs of some issues that may come. Maybe it's a personality quirk or what have you. Maybe it is really some vindictive things going on. And seeing those red flags, it's really about discerning what is really going on, how this interaction is going to make a difference in our own lives, and protecting ourselves from that drama, right? All right, so let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about some things that you may have experienced, Iris, with regard to work relationships where you may have seen some red flags or maybe should have seen some red flags. And when it all unfolded, well, there you have it, right?
Well, I can think of several incidents, but not to maybe focus directly on the specific incident. I think for me, what I noticed about work and in being honest about when people show you who they are, to believe them. And then the only thing, and then in retrospect, because you can always have wisdom and that discernment comes in retrospect, of course, is understanding what you can control. And the only thing I can control is myself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So what I've learned in those work situations is though sometimes you can see different red flags in people's personality. In work situations, it's a little harder because you have to be a certain kind of professionalism. You have to still maintain your integrity at work. So I can't just fly off the handle and tell someone off. Well, actually I can, but it has some consequences. And I've gone through
Especially
that.
as your boss, right?
Yeah. And I've unfortunately had those situations. And so in that situation, the red flag for me was understanding that this person that I was working with, and I'm not going to give any kind of descriptors, was in my mind might have been having some coping issues with possibly their mental health. But in my mind, it was one of those situations where this person had said something and got me called to my supervisor's office. An immediate, okay, this is a problem. And before then, I had always, unfortunately, sometimes you meet someone and you're like, oh, there's something off about them. And you might in your circle laugh about it, like, oh, she's got this issue, she's crazy, whatever you want to say. And so, but when it happened to me and I experienced it for myself, my reaction was one that it solved the problem, but it may not have been the best or the wisest way to do it. So I definitely went down to her room and closed the door and basically had a moment of don't ever let my name come out your mouth again. This was years ago. This was a long time ago. But, for me, it became one, it was twofold. I do feel like I stood up for myself, but also I didn't take the opportunity to try to address the problem ahead of time before it had gotten to that point.
That's the key.
So that was what I learned about. I'd seen the red flags and I just dismissed it as she's got her issue. I'm not letting it bother me. I'm not getting in this, but it ended up bothering me. And so me not coming to her as a professional woman ahead of time and saying, hey, look, that ended up happening later on because I can't say I didn't like how I acted. I felt like I was, right at the time. Wisdom makes you change some things about yourself. But it did end up opening the door to a better relationship with her. Though I did snap. I did the whole head twist, the finger went off, and it was the whole gambit happened. But out of that came, she also realized, okay, maybe I shouldn't have handled this way. So that was helpful in that I kind of learned from that. And though the red flags, I should have addressed them, especially in a work situation, because that can go, if that goes left, you have less control to kind of bring that back in. And that stayed with me about trying to just address any red flags and address people ahead of time in some kind of way. And it doesn't feel good. Confrontation makes my stomach all up in knots. I don't like it, but I could have offset that problem later on. And it worked out, well, but not necessarily, I think, because of what I did, it worked out just because it happened to work out. You know, I definitely think there was some wisdom in there that worked out for me, but that definitely was a situation where I'm like, okay, I could have handled that better in the beginning when I saw those red flags instead of just being like, oh, it's not my problem.
And I think that's key too, because as women, we tend to, I don't know whether men do this as much as we do. I'm sure there are men that do this, but I think as women, we do it a lot. We tend to say, oh, it's okay. They're having a bad day. Oh, it's okay. Their mama didn't raise them right. Or whatever excuse we might come up with, right? But it's always an excuse that we end up owning ourselves when no, we should not own that. If it's going to affect us, if it has affected us, even if it might affect us, we should, as you said, Iris, address the situation. Then it's not out of control. It doesn't call for the finger and the head shaking and all that. We can calmly have that discussion. And I think that's the key to this conversation really, is to let women out there in here know it's okay if you see something, say something, you know, and get it to where it needs to be.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that work experience. I appreciate that. So Mariah, you have some things that you want to share with us too. Now, you're going to talk a little bit about friendships as well as familial relationships. Sometimes we can see, I know family, we don't choose them, we got them, but sometimes we do have to cut them off.
Oh, yes.
I'm just saying.
Yes.
All right. So tell us about some experiences that you've had where you saw red flags, either didn't do or actually did head them off at the pass.
Yes, yes. So in friendships, a lot of times, the red flag that I have experienced a lot is jealousy. And when you have that friend, we've been friends for so long, I love you like a sister. It's hard for me because of how I was raised to see people as wanting to be jealous or to have some type of ill will towards me. So a lot of times
I
I'm
like to say envy.
envy.
It's a little lighter, but
Envy.
it's the same thing.
Envy.
Go ahead.
Envy. Because, you know, it's hard to see that when you love somebody and
Yeah.
you're like, I wouldn't do you like that, or I wouldn't think of you in that way. And so to see people that way. But one instance that just really always comes to mind, I had a really, really close girlfriend in undergrad, and we would go to a lot of events together. We would go to a lot of different shows, fashion shows, different things that they were having on campus all the time. And we were in my room getting dressed. My room was like the getting dressed place. I had a lot of clothes, like, hey, you could wear that, you could wear this, you know. So my room was that place. And so we're in my room and we're getting dressed, and she looks at me and she says, you look too cute, don't wear that.
Oh. And you brushed it off, didn't you, initially?
I said, well, what do you mean? I'm like, you... What do you? I was taken back.
Right.
I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, everybody already knows you. You're already popular. And I always feel like I'm, you know, shrunk down when I go out somewhere with you. So can you wear something different? Because you look cuter than me. And just to hear those words come out of her mouth as a friend, I just was like, wow.
And she wasn't joking.
She wasn't.
I'm waiting for you to say she.
No, she wasn't
very
joking.
serious.
She wasn't joking. She was not joking at all. And over the years, I had heard her say or do little things that I'm like, that doesn't feel like love. That doesn't feel like you're happy for me. It doesn't feel like you're clapping for me. It doesn't feel like you have good intent with the things that you'll say. Or we would get in front of a group of people, like in the dining
She would
hall
clown you.
or something. And she would try to clown me, like to bring out, you know, a flaw that I have, or
But it
y'all
sounded
think
like she had something going on internally.
yeah, she definitely did. She definitely did, but I loved her through that. So I expected the same. And just hearing her finally like have that moment where she actually said, you look better than me. Take that off. That was the first time that I noticed, like, this is a big red flag. This is a big sign, because a real strong woman could stand next to another woman no matter what they look like, no matter what kind of accolades she has. If you're my sister, you're doing good, I'm cheering for you. I'm clapping as loud as anybody else behind you. You know, it wouldn't intimidate me because I know my self-worth too. And I can hang with another pretty girl and be okay. And if you are getting those blessings, or you are having the popularity, or whatever it is that I think is so glorious, you know, I can handle that, because if God is blessing you, he's coming to my door next.
Okay, you know what? Pastor said it a few weeks ago in one of his sermons about birds of a feather flocking together, right?
Sure
So if
did.
they're strong, you're strong, I'm strong, we're strong.
Absolutely.
So that was my mentality. So I had to have that conversation with her, like, one, I think you're beautiful no matter what you have on. But 2, because you feel some kind of way about yourself, you're going to try to knock me down and make me feel like I shouldn't or can't or wouldn't or it's not appropriate to be when I feel good in what I have on. So that was just something I'm like, is that really someone who loves me? Is this really a genuine friendship? And I've even had like with my cousin, you know, we're around the same age, but we have 2 totally different lives. She has children and I do not. You know, I'm in my young 20s, she is as well, but we just have different lifestyles. And so she talks to me one day, we're talking on the phone, and she's like, you know, you make more money than I make, and you don't have no kids. You should be living here, and you should be driving this, and you should be doing that, and your family is so supportive. Why can't you branch off on your own? Are you scared? Do you think that you can handle adulthood? All of these was the conversations that we're having, and it's red flags. I'm like, I thought you were happy for me, you know, when I got my promotion, when I got my car, and all of those things, but you think that my life should look differently because of the different life decisions that you've made, and you had to make different life decisions. You know, I don't have any children, so I don't have to, you know, move out on my own or have a house or different things, just, you know, but because our roles are different, I respect her and I support her in the life decisions that she made, but she made a point to call out the life decisions that I were making when I think, you know, okay, I'm doing pretty good for, you know, my age. I think I'm doing what's best for me right now in this time in the different, you know, trajectory that God has placed over my life. But she came out of a bag on me, and it was so shocking. Like, you make this kind of money. One, how you know how much money I make? Why you counting my pockets? Let's talk about that, number 1. And 2, you know, that just was a red flag for me because I feel, especially because we're young, we all should be taking different roles that we see fit to build out the kind of future that we want to have. My story might look different from yours. We might have started with the same similar background and upbringing, but different things have happened.
Right.
And I feel like as long as I'm not robbing nobody, stealing from nobody, or doing things that are immoral, I'm doing positive things, support me, although they look different than what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And so that was a huge red flag, and it hurt coming from my cousin, somebody who I'm at every baby shower, I'm at every baby birthday, I'm at every, you know, playing that role, but from a family member that really hurt.
You grew up together.
Yeah, that really hurt. And so just knowing that, you know, people can love you, but they don't always understand the vision.
Right.
And you have to have discernment on what you tell people because we're different. We have different
That's the key.
trajectories.
That's very true.
And God gave me something, and you might not even be able to see a little piece of the scope of what He's already given me.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that I've just been working to learn, that, you know, everybody ain't your friend. Everybody does not have your best interest at heart. And, you know, you just have to really see things. Take people for what they are, like you said, when they show you who you are, you believe them the first time. And I might take a mental note. I might write the first couple things down you say that's off down and be like, okay, I'm gonna think about that later. But those big red flags, it's important to take those for what they are and discuss those things at the time.
Yeah. I really appreciate, though, the friend from college who actually, she was pretty honest when she
I was
came,
thinking that.
as they say, out of her face with all of those comments. So, I mean, that was even more than a red flag in my mind because she just laid it out on the table for you. Now you deal with it, right? And I'm interested, just curious to know what did you do? Did you continue the friendship and kept her afar? Did you put her afar? What was the outcome there?
At the time, because I knew where she was coming from, I knew the insecurities that she struggled with, and I knew where she was at in her life, I kind of was like, girl, you beautiful. I'm cute. Like, we cute together. It's not no difference. Everybody has a preference, but you look good. And so we had that conversation, and then I kind of just pursued on with the friendship. But then a little bit down the line, more red flags came, and I'm like, she is really not here for me in the best way. She's not really being supportive or genuine of me. I felt like she was around me when I was winning because it looked good and it was a connecting factor to her. But when it really came to genuinely having my back and genuinely wanting to be there out of love and support from me versus just a image facade thing that was going on. So eventually I did end the friendship. Actually, yeah, I did.
And it's hard because
it hurts.
I was going to say, as you said about the family member, it hurts.
It
and
hurts.
that's what I think why women so often put the red flags on the back burner because they don't, one, want the confrontation, and two, I should say we, because I'm part of that too. I've done it. We don't want the hurt. But in fact, we continue to hurt if we stay in that relationship with all the red flags just waving around, smacking us in the face and all of that too, right?
Yes.
So that's where we really have to be adult.
Yes.
And we have to make that discernment choice to say, this is not in my best interest. It's not healthy for me.
Keep it moving.
And I got to keep it moving.
Yep.
And pray for that person.
And pray for that
Right.
person, because everybody who is projecting a red flag is coming from a broken place.
Yes.
It's coming from a childhood trauma. It's coming from an upset that they have not addressed yet. And so just being able to know that and to have the discernment going forward, like, sir, I can kick it with you, but certain things about my future, about my peace, I have to protect, and I can't share that with you. And it's okay to have a friendship or a relationship that have different areas and different, restrictions upon them.
Thank you so much for saying that, Mariah, because that's it. It comes from a broken place. What do they say? Hurt people hurt people. And that's what you have. Sometimes it's really not that person. It's just like the Bible says that we wrestle against powers and principalities, not flesh and blood. So it's not necessarily that person per se, but the place, the experience, those things that they come from that we are really wrestling against. And that's where prayer is significantly needed.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. And so, Lisa, you've got some red flags that you want to talk about with regard to significant other relationships.
Absolutely. Just to give some background on a relationship that took me down a rabbit hole, shall I say. I was in a serious relationship for about 3 years. We were talking about marriage, ring shopping, and how it started very mundane. It started just being around the person, having a good time, undergrad, in college. And he actually started calling me his girlfriend before I was officially his girlfriend. So it was kind of like manifesting. I'm manifesting my woman, sort of say. And it took shape of its own, but we did not lay down that foundation to make sure that it can survive everything that the relationship was getting ready to go through. So, Mariah hit it right on the head. When you're with someone and they have experienced trauma, they have, a family that is broken, they have hurt people that are hurting people right in their own home. It kind of takes face in their everyday life when they're just living and doing things. So being with someone, you kind of sign up to go through what they're going through. And when you don't know that and you don't recognize that from the very beginning, you kind of don't know what you're signing on the dotted line for. And the relationship had a plethora of red flags all the way down to my spirituality. Like, me being with someone who wasn't as familiar with the Lord as I was, who didn't have that church relationship, who parent did not drag them to church when they didn't want to go, knowing that this is the best thing for them, and that eventually down the line it will take face. This child would not steer from the way that I'm putting in front of them, although they don't want to be here right here at that moment. So they didn't have that foundation. They had a family that was very broken and was still going through a lot. And when I signed up for that, you mentioned it, I signed up to be that person, to be that fight, to be that rock. I'm going to introduce you to the Lord. I'm going to pour into you. I'm going to build myself up to try to build you up. I'm going to fix you in a way. But as we all know, you can't fix nobody. You cannot
Can't
fix
raise a man.
nobody.
And you cannot change
You
anybody but
cannot
yourself.
change anybody but yourself. So the relationship, it was going. There was a lot that was happening in that relationship, and a lot that I allowed, because I just told myself at one point, I'm going to be who I'm going to be. He's going to be who he is going to be, but I love him. And is that okay for us to say in those moments? It's not. But we tell ourselves that time and time again. I had these timetables on life. I told myself by 25, I was going to be married. I'm going to travel the world for 5 years with my husband. I'm going to have kids by 5:30. I had timetables and I needed some deadlines to be met. And with me having this background in project management, it was like, we got to be under
working the
budget and on
project.
time. We working the project.
Yeah,
we got to
have
get
to
somewhere.
Love it, love it.
Okay, so did not take the time to find the best person, but saw someone who had a light over them. And I love seeing the potential in people. I love seeing where someone can be, where someone as long as we continue to work at it, we can get there. But the thing is, Pastor says it all the time: faith without works is dead. So if you pouring into somebody that is still empty in their cup, they don't want to be poured into. It's like a losing battle. It's draining. It's stressful.
is.
And the relationship, it was just arguing after arguing, stuff that we didn't even need to be arguing before. Like, for example, coming home on a road trip, arguing about playing I Declare War, and a fish like saying one word that means something else. Oh, it turned into a very heated argument. And at that point, I was able to see that this is more than this I Declare War argument. This is something deeply rooted, and it just started taking a face of its own. And I'm telling myself, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna stick it through because I need to. I was ignoring those red flags. I saw those red flags. Girlfriends was tapping me on my shoulders,
Like,
jumping
we
in my
still-
DMs, calling my phone. It got to the point that when my phone would ring and I would see it was one of my girlfriends, my heart would drop because I'm like, I don't want to answer this phone because I'm afraid of what they're gonna say. What they're gonna say, because they made it their mission to call me, and I don't know if it was out of love or if it was out of like I was the only one in a serious relationship at the time. So what I did is I stayed in it for a very long time, and I said I'm gonna stick it out because what I see around me is that our parents, our mothers, our aunties, our grandmothers, they stick with their man. They didn't get this happily ever after without going through something. So I got to go through something. I have to stay here to make this worth my while. I got to get this ring, and I have to be a wife, and I have to be a mother, and I got my timetable. So it was sticking around for a bad thing with the hopes of getting everything that I wanted, or that I thought I wanted, or that I thought I needed. And it totally took me out of my element. It started to make me into a person that I didn't like seeing in the mirror. I'm not this person. I'm a sweetheart. Like, these blowout arguments and these disagreements and these scenes that we're making in public now.
Wow.
I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. And I was to the point, like, we had shopped for rings, set a date, and I said, you know what? Let me pray. Let me fast. Let me figure some things out, because I've been sitting through a storm. It got better for a while, but I knew it could have got worse eventually. And I stopped. I prayed. I fast. And when I tell you the Lord blew my situation up, he said, you've been sitting and I've been telling you to go. So now I have to do something treacherous to let you know that it's time. It is time for you to get up, stop ignoring these red flags, and exit this situation. And he blew that situation up to the point that when I finally put my hands up and said, this is what I'm done with, I walked myself to the nearest therapist, and I've been in therapy since then. Getting myself together, healing, because I sat through the storm. I weathered that relationship, and it took a toll on me. And so I had to go back, and I had to say, we should not ignore red flags, like you said. We should address those flags before they become bigger issues. And now I have to rebuild myself up so that I'm not the next mad black woman for another man. I don't miss out on my true blessing. I don't miss out on the man that the Lord has set for me. I don't want to miss out on that. So I'm like, I needed to take my time. I took 2 years in therapy, single, before I actually decided to think about stepping foot into another relationship, because I had some healing to do. And it's crazy because the healing never stops.
Absolutely.
You never know
Absolutely.
when it's truly over for you. You can see a picture that, pictures take us back. They take us back. And
them Snapchat memories. Girl.
You see,
Facebook memories.
girl,
child.
you know what you were doing. You know what you were wearing. You see, your senses start tingling. All the senses. I can smell just the aroma of the experience. And some of those things can be jarring to the point where it puts you back. And I promise you, I've had to call my therapist stuff like, I don't know why this person has a hold on me. And she said, the first thing I want you to do is change your verbiage. Change your language, because there's power in the tongue.
Absolutely.
And sometimes what we speak is what we put over ourselves. So I want, as hard as it might be, because that's the way you feel. I understand how you feel. I need you to make a conscious effort to put the actions towards changing your perspective on this situation.
And praise God that you sought therapy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, with your prayer, with your fasting,
Yeah.
that was the Lord's anointing over you to bring you
Oh,
back
yeah.
to his child, to be what he made you to be.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It was a blessing. And that's why we shouldn't ignore those red flags.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Can I piggyback off something that
Go
you
right
said? I
ahead.
think something that you said that was just immaculate was you talked about the times table. And I think as women, that is something that we have had in our minds
Time
since
clock's
we were
ticking.
5. I want to have this kind of wedding, and then it
Fairy
changes by
tale.
the age you get into middle school, and then by high school, okay, I can see adulthood. I want to have this and this and that. And I think even in our friendships, we want to have the girlfriends and the living single, the close friends.
yeah.
So I'm gonna ignore these red flags because this is a part of my circle, which is a part of my overarching identity that I have to have by this date, by this time. And even if I know some things ain't right, I'm just going to ignore it and push it to the side because it's getting me closer to what I think I should have or what I think it should look like. Even in the relationships, we have this time set, and we're so hard on ourselves as
Yes.
women. We are so hard on ourselves. We have these perspectives and these expectations, and we just set the mark and set the mark and set the mark. Even if it ain't right, as long as I got a little bit of it, I'm going to hold on to it. And I think that ends up creating more damage on the back end because we're looking so far into the future that we're missing the present and the things that are right in front of us. And that's important. And I think that's something that we all could work on because when we try to hold it together, that's our role.
Yes.
That's what we do.
We always
And
okay,
sometimes-
even when we not okay.
Even when we not. And sometimes we go from being that Gorilla Glue all the way down to the little Elmer's glue, all the way down to a little piece of Scotch tape from Dollar Tree.
Okay.
We breaking down.
Because that doesn't stick.
Okay.
So anyway, but what two scriptures come to mind. My favorite scripture, God works all things together for your good.
Absolutely.
Because you are called according to his purpose. And that was where you were when you sought him in prayer and in fasting and you were led to therapy, and that you went through therapy and still continue. I know sometimes I might take a break from my therapist,
Absolutely.
but then I'll call something to happen. I get triggered and I'll go, wait a minute, I better get back in there for a few weeks,
Yes.
because we
too.
are always learning and growing.
Yes.
And finding new situations that may trigger old situations,
Absolutely.
and where are the tools to handle them?
Yep.
And that's what I think therapy is a wonderful thing. The right therapist, of course. You can't
Absolutely.
get somebody that's not of God, because then you're defeating that purpose too.
Yes.
But and then the other scripture, and it just flew out of my brain just that fast. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we're going to let that go because, I am in my 50s. So if it comes back to me, I'll just hurry up and say it. But I do want to thank you all for sharing your personal situations with us, with whether it's work, whether it is, situations with significant others, family, friends, because we do so much as women to try and tape things together, pull things together. As I said, we are by nature nurturers.
Yes.
We're always pouring in, but who is pouring into us? And that's what we really have to watch.
Yes.
Because those soul ties, whether they are significant other, work, or family,
real.
they are so real.
And they have impact.
Absolutely.
And they have impact.
Absolutely. And they can influence you to the negative or the positive. Where do you want to be? And that's really significant. So, this conversation is really awesome. And I have enjoyed everything that you all have shared today. As a matter of fact, I would like to propose that we have a part 2, a second to this. I don't know how you all feel about coming back.
I'm down
And
for
maybe
it.
we might be able to get a man's perspective.
We need it.
Yes, 'cause I have more to say.
So maybe even one of those girls that was the, if you will, the mean girl who had a change. Maybe we'll see if we can get some research and find out if we can get some other perspectives here, because I think it'll be really important and significant to all of you out there listening and watching us too, because we're here not just to help you, but to help ourselves and to grow and to learn. That's what Woven is all about. Women of Victory Empowerment Network. And so I thank you for agreeing to that second part. We'll get it all together and talk some more. And thank you for sharing, because those are intimate things and those are significant things that have happened in your life, hurtful, and whether you had to grow through them, grow out of them, what have you. And I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for watching us, for joining us, and look for our next I always mess it up. Her space. I was going to say she shed, because, that's the other Woven situation, right? And so we'll get to those too. But her space right here with Victory at the Table Talk, because we are going to have a part 2 to red flags. And we're going to see how those maybe I might even bring some flags and wave
We
when
need
we talk
green
about
flags too. Talk about the strengths.
About the
Hello.
healthy
And that's where we
relationships,
want to go.
healthy things
Hey, we
to
might
do.
end up with 3 parts to this, but we get into the strengths and the healthy parts. Definitely. Thank you again so much. And thank you for joining us. And we look forward to you joining us again. And don't forget, March 30th, our chat with the pastor. Look for that as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk. Come get your victory.